Before we begin this heartfelt and powerful tale set in an Air Force mess hall involving former President Donald Trump, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss the stories that truly resonate with the soul. It was a cool, clear spring morning. At Maxwell Air Force Base, the mess hall was quietly abuzz with expectation. A rumor had spread like wildfire. Former President Donald Trump was making an unexpected visit. There were no press cameras, no journalists, just him and the servicemen and women. Such unannounced appearances by a president were incredibly rare. Cadet First Class Isla Hartley, 22, sat in a distant corner of the mess hall, poking absently at her untouched breakfast. Even with the air around her filled with excitement, her gaze remained on her bare tray. She couldn't eat. Known by her peers as Iron Wings for her flawless performance in flight simulations, Isla was anything but steady that week. Her mind was far from the base. Sergeant Dawson, the stern but well-meaning supervisor of the mess hall, noticed Isla and stopped beside her, his expression curious. "You all right, cadet?" he asked. Isla forced a weak smile and replied, "Just not hungry, sir." Outside, the base sirens wailed, signaling the arrival of a visiting VIP. Everyone immediately straightened up. Isla stood with them, lips pressed tightly together. Then the doors opened, and in walked Trump, not in a suit, but in a simple windbreaker, his smile warm and unassuming. "At ease," he said, beaming. The room erupted into applause. Phones were lifted to snap photos, but Trump was looking for something more than just admiration. His eyes moved through the crowd, deliberately until they stopped at something subtle, an untouched tray, alone, isolated as he moved down the rows, shaking hands and making small talk. "Where are you from? How's the food? Who's the best shot?" The atmosphere remained light. But then he arrived at Isa's table. His steps paused. He looked directly at her, then at her tray. "Didn't eat?" he asked softly, but with sincere concern. Isa stood quickly. "Sir, I wasn't hungry." Trump tilted his head thoughtfully. A packed mess hall and one untouched tray. That says something. She didn't know how to respond. Her fellow cadets looked uncomfortable, trying to move past the moment, but Trump raised his hand to stop them. "What's your name?" he asked. "Cadet Isla Hartley." "Sir." He didn't probe further. He nodded once and then pulled out a chair. Sitting across from her, "Mind if I join you for a bit?" You could have heard a pin drop. Phones were lowered. Even Sergeant Dawson stopped mid-stride, frozen. "Permission granted, sir," Isla said hesitantly. Confused, Trump leaned forward, arms folded on the table. "You've got the look of someone bearing a heavy burden. You don't have to speak. But I've learned over time, a tray can tell a story." The room was completely still. Isa's hands trembled faintly. Her eyes dropped as she fought back emotion. "It's just been a tough week, sir," she whispered. Trump nodded. "Talk to me about it." There was something disarming in his demeanor. It didn't feel like politics, it felt human. So Isla opened up. "My dad had a stroke last week. He's in a hospital in Montana. Serving in the Air Force was his dream for me. Said it was in our blood. But they won't let me take emergency leave. I may not even get to say goodbye." Trump blinked, visibly moved. "No leave for something like that." Isla shook her head. "Orders are orders. I'm close to graduating. One mistake and I lose it all." The room seemed to lean in. Breath held. Trump didn't interrupt. He listened intently. "I've been calling during my breaks. Yesterday, the nurse said he didn't recognize my voice." Her voice broke. "That's why I couldn't eat." Trump leaned back in his chair, eyes softened. "Isla, I've met kings, presidents, and billionaires. But I've also sat with mothers holding folded flags at funerals. Sometimes, the strongest people in the room are the ones nobody notices." He nodded toward her tray. "An empty tray. That's not weakness. That's the mark of someone still standing, despite the storm inside." Isa's eyes welled with tears. Her voice cracked. "Thank you, sir." Trump leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're not invisible. Not to me." She nodded, swallowing hard. Turning to Sergeant Dawson, Trump asked, "Who's the commanding officer on base?" "Colonel Pierce, sir. He's in the command wing." "Good," Trump said firmly. "I'd like to speak with him." Murmurs rippled through the mess hall. Trump stood, placing a steady hand on Isa's shoulder. "You hang in there. I've moved mountains for less." Then, softer, he added, "And Isla, next time you skip a meal, let it be for something less painful." The tension lifted slightly. Laughter rippled through the mess hall. Trump turned to the line. "Now where's that legendary Air Force mac and cheese I've heard about?" He joined the line, grabbing a tray like everyone else. Isa's tray remained empty, but her heart wasn't. Within an hour, Colonel Pierce received a direct summons to the command wing. "Colonel Trump," began, "I sat across from a cadet whose father is dying, and she isn't allowed to go see him." Pierce straightened in defense. "Sir, we follow regulations. She's in her final phase. Any absence could jeopardize." "I understand that," Trump interrupted gently. "But there must be space for compassion in leadership. I'm not giving orders. I'm reminding you this uniform stands for more than protocol. It stands for principles." Pierce exhaled slowly. "If it were your daughter," Trump asked, "would you stop her from saying goodbye?" Pierce was quiet for a long moment. No, sir, I wouldn't. Then do the right thing, Trump said, quietly. She deserves dignity, not headlines. That evening, Issa received a quiet knock at her dorm. A senior officer handed her an envelope. Inside was a short note. Cadet Hartley, you are hereby granted compassionate leave for 72 hours. A military escort will take you home. Uniform not required. Colonel Pierce, P.S. Don't forget to eat. DT Issa stared at the note, overwhelmed. Her roommate, Cadet Jules Ramos, shouted with joy. Girl, you're going home. Who even gets that kind of clearance? Issa whispered. President Trump. He listened. In a matter of hours, Issa boarded a government jet with a flight escort and 2 medics. The pilot gave her a reassuring nod. We're ordered to get you there safely and fast. You okay, Cadet? I will be, she said, softly. High above the clouds, Issa watched the sunrise tint the sky in pinks and golds. For the first time in days, she felt at peace. She whispered, Dad, I'm coming. Back in Montana, her hometown hospital received a surprising call. Prepare for a presidential authorized military arrival. The nurse blinked. Say that again. One of our own is coming home. Issa entered the hospital quietly. Her boots echoed on the floor. Her flight jacket hung loosely over her civilian clothes. She scanned each room. Then, she saw him, her father, lying still, eyes closed, wires tracing across his body. He's stable now, the nurse said, but he hasn't spoken all day. Issa leaned down. Hey, Dad, it's me. Issa, silence. She grasped his hand, now frail in hers. You always told me to fly above the clouds. I did, but even clouds couldn't keep me from you. His fingers twitched. Her breath caught. Dad, his eyes flickered open, hazy, but focused. He rasped. I'm home, she said, voice trembling. Tears filled his eyes. He made it. He gripped her hand weakly. Outside the room, a nurse quietly took a photo, not for the press, but for Issa, proof that a daughter arrived in time. Back at Maxwell, Trump revisited the mess hall. No announcement, just breakfast with the troops. He approached Issa's usual table. It was empty. Sergeant Dawson walked over. She made it. Sir, her dad recognized her. Trump smiled faintly. Good. That tray was never meant to stay empty. He sat down and ate in silence. A young cadet approached shyly. Mr. President, can I join you? Trump nodded. Of course. As long as you don't leave your tray empty. More cadets joined. Rank didn't matter anymore. They simply shared the table. Stories emerged of sick mothers, lost siblings, deferred dreams. Trump said little. He listened. Because sometimes, true leadership is about being present and hearing what goes unspoken. Issa returned a few days later, with her father's blessing and renewed clarity. She walked into the mess hall and found her usual seat. Sergeant Dawson grinned. Good to see you back. This time she filled her tray mac and cheese, cornbread, chocolate milk. She opened a letter and handed it to Dawson. Can you get this to him? You bet, he said. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. Mr. President, my tray may have been empty, but my heart was full the day you sat with me. My father held my hand. He knew me. You made that possible. Thank you for seeing the person, not just the uniform. With gratitude, Cadet Isla Hartley. The note eventually reached Trump's desk. He read it silently, then placed it in a folder labeled Personal Keep. That day, he sent a memo to the Department of Defense, effective immediately. Commanders may grant emergency leave to cadets facing emotional hardship. Use discretion and compassion. It became known as the Hartley Directive. Across military bases, commanding officers began noticing empty trays, tired eyes, quiet cadets. One tray had told a story. That story changed policies and lives. A few weeks later, a photograph appeared quietly on the bulletin board of the Air Force Academy. It showed Issa in her flight uniform, smiling beside her father, who was in a hospital gown holding her hand. There were no flashy logos, no media fanfare, just a simple caption written in blue ink. She made it home. Someone snapped a picture of the board and uploaded it online, with the caption, one empty tray, one full heart. Isla Hartley, silent heroes. Within hours, the post went viral. Veterans, cadets, nurses, and families across the country began sharing their own stories under the same tag. Trump reposted it with 3 simple words. She inspired us. For Issa, it was never about attention. It was about love and the responsibility she felt to serve. But for many, it became a powerful reminder. Sometimes the most transformative stories are born in silence. Issa returned to her training, but she was no longer the same. She had changed. Stronger, calmer. One morning, she was called to the commander's office. Straightening her uniform nervously, she knocked and entered. Colonel Pierce greeted her with a rare grin. Cadet Hartley, you've just been assigned breakfast duty. Starting now. She blinked. Sir. He gestured toward a side room. Inside, seated at a table with 2 trays, was President Trump. He looked up and smiled. I owe you a breakfast. Issa laughed. Yes, sir, I think you do. They sat together, sharing quiet conversation over breakfast. No fanfare. Trump asked about her father's recovery, her future ambitions, and why she joined the military. Isa responded honestly, because someone needs to protect the skies for those who can't. Trump nodded. I'd trust you with mine. As they finished, he slid a small box toward her. Inside was a simple pin, an eagle in flight with the word "seen" etched beneath its wings. Isa wore the pin inside her uniform. Close to her heart, days passed, and life on base returned to normal. But something subtle had changed. Isa noticed cadets talking more, supporting one another, paying closer attention to the quiet signs. One evening in the dorms, she found her bunkmate, Cadet Leo Mills, sitting silently, staring at his untouched dinner tray. She approached. Everything okay, Leo? He shook his head. My brother's cancer came back. Isa didn't say anything. She simply sat beside him and slid her tray aside too. No advice, no words, just presence. Later in her journal, she wrote, it's not always about fixing, sometimes it's just about not letting someone sit alone. Back in Montana, Isa's father continued to recover. Speech therapy helped him regain strength. One morning, with shaking hands, he wrote a letter and sent it to Washington. Dear President Trump, you might not remember me, but I remember you. You brought my daughter home. I raised her to believe in duty. I never imagined that same duty might keep her from me, but you changed that. You saw her. That's what real leadership is. Even if I never walk again, I'll always stand tall knowing my girl made it because someone in power chose compassion. With gratitude, a thankful dad. The letter was framed and placed in the West Wing. Months later, Isa stood among the top graduates of her class. Her name rang out loud and proud. Cadet First Class, Isla Hartley. Distinguished graduate. She marched forward, shoulders back, gaze strong. Colonel Pierce pinned the badge of honor onto her chest and whispered, you taught us more than we taught you. To her surprise, her father sat near the front row, in a wheelchair, tears rolling down his cheeks. Standing beside him was Trump, clapping. After the ceremony, Isa ran into her father's arms. You did it, baby girl, he whispered. Trump grinned. So, think you'll be the one piloting Air Force One someday? She laughed. Sir, I've got even bigger dreams. That evening, Trump gave a brief, unscripted speech at the Academy banquet. He held no teleprompters, only a single sheet of paper. He looked out at the sea of uniforms. I met a cadet this year who reminded me of something no book or battlefield could teach. He began, she showed me that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it sits quietly at a table with an empty tray, and still shows up. He glanced toward Isa. We talk often of strength in flight, in strategy, in command, but never forget the strength found in empathy, in truly listening, in noticing what others miss. The applause was thunderous, but for Isa, the loudest sound was the quiet rhythm of her heart, full, steady, and finally whole. Later, the mess hall installed a new plaque. Above Isa's usual seat, it read, in honor of Cadet Isla Hartley, who taught us the power of one empty tray. Below, it hung a polished silver tray, never used. Cadets walked past it each day. Some nodded, some paused, some left small notes, drawings, or stickers. It became more than a tribute. It became a lesson. See the unseen. Ask about the quiet ones. Honor the burdens others carry. In Isa, she never sat alone again. Years later, a 17-year-old named Amaya Benson entered the Air Force Academy. Nervous and unsure if she belonged, she wandered into the mess hall, clutching her tray. Scanning the room for a place to sit, she noticed the plaque. She read the inscription and smiled. Sitting beneath it, she was soon joined by upperclassmen. One leaned in. You know the story, right? Amaya shook her head. Girl sat here once. Tray, empty, heart full. Changed everything. Amaya didn't fully understand, but she would. That night, in her journal, she wrote, one day, I want to be like her. Today, Isla Hartley, now Captain Hartley, flies above distant skies. Her call sign, Echo. She transports wounded soldiers, delivers supplies, and mentors the next generation. And wherever she flies, she wears that pin beneath her uniform, the eagle with the word seen. On one mission, she flew a young soldier home to his dying mother. She never explained why she insisted on that route. But her commander later found a handwritten note on his desk. Sometimes, a tray tells the entire story. Make room for one more. Captain Isla Hartley. At a veterans event years later, an older Trump stood on stage to present a humanitarian medal. The honoree, Captain Isla Hartley. I once saw her eat nothing, he said, grinning, but she fed everyone with her courage. Isa walked to the stage, head high, in full dress uniform. Mr. President, she said into the microphone, you once told me I had the eyes of someone carrying something heavy. You helped me carry it, and you showed me how to help others carry theirs. Trump nodded, eyes misty. In the audience, a young cadet whispered, that's her, the one with the empty tray. But now, Isa's tray and her life were full.